TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark's at it.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in Dark's at it stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I am your host, TruthSeekah. Excited and delighted to be with you guys today. Got an awesome show lined up. We're going to get into some spiritual conversation for all of you people who are into spirituality. If you're seasoned and you've been in this thing for a long time, or if you're just coming into it, man, there's going to be some things that we're going to talk about that can help you wherever you are, and just some practical things to bring to the table to help you out in your day-to-day. Can't go any further without saying a huge thank you to all the Patreon supporters. You guys are the enablers. You guys help create this show and push it out there. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. Give a quick shout out to some of the newest patrons that we have this last week. Here we Devin Ray. Thank you, my friend, for coming on and supporting the show. And Michael Payne, thank you so much for coming on as well. These are two of the latest supporters within the last week. Like I said, huge thank you. Couldn't do it without you. If you would like to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music, all of the music I've ever done, which is like 10 plus albums, 200 some odd songs. You get access to all of that. You get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics sessions, where we've been hanging out just the last couple weeks, but we try to get in and do some courses and stuff together, some prayer, some activation, and really training and equipping in your psychic abilities, your intuition, how to hear the voice of the Spirit speaking to you, which many of you have been hearing your entire life. So we create a safe space where we can come together and kind of practice on one another. And we've had some phenomenal encounters. So we've been hanging out the last couple weeks, but we're going to get back into some more courses and discussions and things like that. So you get access to that. That's every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central. Also, you get access to the Discord channel, which is in the description as well. So yeah, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah to support. And want to give a special shout out to the people giving at the light body level, the diamond body level. Shout out to Adam Brink and Noah. Thank you guys for supporting at that level as well. So without further ado, we're going to bring on today's guest, and we're going to get into some of this conversation for you guys. Molly MacCartney, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day.
Definitely.
How about you?
Doing good. Got my gotta give a quick plug here. Got my new TruthSeekah mugs in.
Nice.
Got me a
looking
fat
good.
cup of coffee there. So yeah.
Yep, very good. Very good.
Excited about this conversation. So a lot of times, like, people will send me a bunch of questions that they want me to ask, or whether it's promoting a book or about their past or whatever the case is. So, but usually I just like to just have organic conversation with people, and then the people listening on the podcast, they just get to sit in on like a first time conversation. So that's what this is. I've got some questions that I wanted to ask you, and usually like to start by going back to the childhood and the past and things like that. So we'll start there. But first, just kind of give everybody an introduction to who you are and what you bring to the table.
Well, my name is Molly MacCartney. I'm a master intuitive psychic medium, energy healer, and teacher from Orlando, Florida, still living in Orlando, Florida. Traveled around a little bit in the middle years, but serving here to help people ignite their own inner light. And I love what I do. I give readings, but my main calling is to mentor other people who are feeling intuitive and feeling a bit lost and not knowing what to do with their spiritual gifts, or repressing them because they feel ashamed or scared, or the world's told them that it's a scary thing. It's something that's so needed in this world right now, and it's coming back. And I've been there. I've been down the dark rabbit hole of not being able to live in my truth, and I feel it's so important to help people do that.
That's a huge part of the journey, is finally coming to grips with who you are and being okay with that. Was that a struggle for you? Was there like back and forth of fighting? I'm going to be public with what I believe, or I'm going to keep it to myself and work in the shadows type deal? Was that like a process of maybe months or years that took place for you?
It was definitely a lifetime process, and it still is, honestly,
Yeah.
because I'm definitely more in the public eye now, and I have a lot of people who read what I write, and I feel more responsible to maintain clarity on the path and to make sure I'm presenting what I know to be true from my experience all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did begin when I was a little kid, like most of us. I was totally open with it, and then, there were people around me that said I was weird, or I was, just out there. So I kind of had that weird stamp across my head a lot of my childhood. But, I kept it there. I was the only child, so I could play with spirit a lot. I could hear them in the wind. I could see them around my bed at night. And I just kind of went into the space of, well, maybe I am pretending, but it sure is amazing. So I'll just keep doing that. I shut it down due to loss of my father. I got really upset when I lost my father, as could be expected, completely heartbroken and shattered, and really shut down to spirit in my elementary years, and really struggled through childhood because of all that, and just stopped trusting the divine, basically. And when you don't trust the divine, you can still be very intuitive and very sensitive, but you have no guidance, you have no guiding light. So I knew that I could see things in other people, I could sense patterns, but I didn't know what to do with it. So that made me very confused. So I had a divine appointment, I call it, with tarot cards as a teenager. And that's where it was in the shadows a bit, but it was my saving grace, because I could finally navigate life through spiritual means and look at a spiritual level of reality, where before it was always like, well, this happened to me, and this is terrible. This happened to a friend. This guy dumped me. This, I'm not feeling well. All these things are going on. And so I just would numb out. But if I went to the tarot cards, I could look at it as a growth process. And so that's when it really started to bloom as a tool that I wanted to live with out loud. And then I took psychic development classes as a 20 something. And through that course of study, I really grew and healed. So I had a lot of negative things to overcome by that point, my early 20s to my early 30s. And that was when I really started to come out of the spiritual closet, as they call it, to my family, to everything, because they were a Christian and they loved me, and we're all good now. But I was so afraid that they would completely reject me, say I was doing something evil. I didn't even know what I was doing, especially when mediumship came in. I was like, how do I know these things? How am I hearing the exact thing this person needs to hear? And I can see their family member, what's going on. Because all the social training had told me it was just freaky. But it's not. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's like, whenever we're coming up, there's so many people who have these similar stories. I mean, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is the fact that I wish I had somebody there to like help me and guide me, and this is the way to do it, and it's okay to mess up, and it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be different as well. Like, we didn't really have those people there. It was like as far as, I'm in the Bible Belt, so we're definitely, dealing with the churches and coming out of religion. And if it was anything that kind of deviated from their belief system, not necessarily the Bible, because there's a lot of deep, crazy stuff in there that I like to bring out. But if it deviated from their doctrine and from their rules and things that they believe in, then you get shunned or whatever. So it's like you got to walk on eggshells, kind of, and you either with them or against them type deal with the belief system. So with like being open with it now, I hope that your story, this podcast, and there's thousands of people out there now who are embracing their messages. I'm hoping that they can, reach out to younger people and help them, and not, so that they don't feel so isolated. Like, what would have happened if, when you were very young, if you had someone in your family, or it was just like an okay thing to explore those voices or explore those feelings of intuition or being connected with nature? Like, what would have happened then,
Well, I think that's why it was so hard when my dad died, because he was more open to it. And I've talked a lot with my mom over the years about it, and she's, she loves and accepts me. There's no issues there, but it took her some time to really get there with me. With him, he was already, talking to friends of his. I heard later, he would talk about mediumship and other worlds and other dimensions. He was very fascinated by that stuff. And I also have an aunt who practiced Wicca and really got into all of that. So she gets it, And so, but we weren't close in terms of distance. So I'd only see her every once in a while. But it was a saving grace to have at least those two people in the direct family to know that I'm not completely off the mark. I mean, there's something there in the family. And then friendship wise, I had some good friends, but I was still kind of the weird one for a long time until I did meet a really good soul friend to grow with in high school. And I noticed that with my clients, a lot of times they will meet a friend that they walk the path with together, and maybe it's twin flame. There's lots of different theories about what that is. But you can really finally find a home in somebody and say, okay, I'm not, we get each other finally. It's taken some time, but we get each other. And that's something I would tell any young person to believe in, that there are other souls here. You have contracts to meet up with them, divine appointments. It's going to be okay. And sometimes you walk that barren wasteland for a little while, and that's where you build faith. And you look back and go, oh my gosh, I'm so much stronger because I made it through that.
Did you ever get into any of the dark stuff? Did you start out within any of the dark magic, or looking into witchcraft or anything like that, contacting?
Luckily, no. I'm grateful for my Christian foundation because of that. I resonated with divine energy, and I knew the good feeling of that. So I never was tempted, and I've never been one to try to make things happen for myself or, manipulate things. That's just not in my nature. So I feel lucky. That's just out. I did have a friend who had experienced, somebody was in Necronomicon, I think. I can't remember what the name is, but some dark stuff. And I did, after I left the church around 14 years old, I started researching other religions. I got really fascinated and saw very similar stories in a lot of religions. So I did look into Wicca, but it's definitely not dark, contrary to what some people believe. It's beautiful nature-based worship. And I went to a Sabbat, and I've worked in a Wiccan store as a reader every now and then. So I consider myself a little bit witchy. I think anybody who is accepting their spiritual gifts and healing ability has that, but it's not in that dark witch way. So yeah, I feel lucky that I didn't go down that path. I'm pretty much protected by my guides. They won't let me.
Let me ask you this. So you talk about how, like, everybody is intuitive, and everybody has these dormant abilities. For some of them, they were like more active whenever we were younger, and then through all types of stuff, training, suppression, lies, stuff like that, we kind of suppress those abilities and even ideas that those things exist or whatever. Most of the people, I think, who are like listening to a podcast like this, or who hit me up for services or whatever the case is, they're usually people who want to do what we're doing. Like I don't know if you've noticed that a lot of people who come to you for healing or for a reading, for me, I'm seeing the majority of the time, they want to be healers themselves, or they feel intuitive and they don't know how that looks or how to tap into it or whatever. The message I got from Spirit some years ago was heal the healers. And it's all of these healers out there who need to be healed first. First, it was myself, right? Heal, you know what I'm saying? Heal yourself, then heal the healers. Are you seeing that as well? Is there like a resurgence of this stuff? Are people wakening up to their abilities, and is there room for them here?
Absolutely. I totally see that. And my clients and the folks that tend to come to me, it's almost as if I'm giving them permission to finally live out loud. So they're not necessarily going to go into doing the work. Some are. A lot that take my program are looking to be spirit workers, energy workers, readers, and they want to integrate that power into what they're doing and finally just stop playing small. Yeah, that's by the time you're already on the path, you're already picked up some skills and have awakened to your gifts, but you're like, all right, enough making excuses. I'm going to do this. That's when you come to me. Yeah, I feel like that's the vision that I've gotten. And years ago, I mean, I download all the time, divine downloads, we call them, of course, through readings. That's what I do all the time, every day. But years ago when I was developing, I did a lot of what you just said. I would sit and just listen to spirit and I would get lots of guidance. And it was a vision very similar to that. I love that you asked that question because I wonder if this was going to come up, that the second coming is actually in humanity, that we're not waiting for just one person to come, that the Christ consciousness comes through people who are waking up and are expressing those gifts through healing. Because as Christ said, this and more you shall do yourself. And there's a whole verse on spiritual gifts. And I'm not a scholar, so I don't remember the numbers and the names, but you know, there's lots of little pieces in there that state, you know, we're coming. And if we support each other in that, you know, we can't have a world, especially in the religion area, that's saying, no, don't wake up those gifts. Those are scary. You're not allowed, because that's what's going to help balance the world. So yeah, I think that's really important.
It's beautiful because it's all throughout the Bible, man. It's from everywhere from Genesis to Revelation, spiritual giftings, and you know, they just feel like they own the terminology or whatever. But really, as far as being a Berean and just really tearing up the scriptures and cross-referencing and stuff and studying everything, ESP is usually like where it's at. They're just different offshoots of ESP and being able to sense the spirit through the different bodily functions and the five senses or whatever, six senses really. That you know what I'm saying, you're able to feel and discern that. And there's examples throughout the scriptures where Jesus and the disciples were, you know, waking up in the middle of the night and they had a dream and they were led to, you know, to go to this city, you know, as part of your destiny, those synchronicities and things. And it's all throughout the Bible. So it's really beautiful to eventually find out what this show exists to do, is not to condemn people, but to let them know that, you know what I'm saying, even the Bible doesn't condemn them. It promotes what they're going through. So that's the beautiful thing about it. When somebody comes to that understanding that God is not against me, even from a Judeo-Christian experience, you know, God is for me and he's for these abilities and things like that. It's beautiful. It's changing people's lives. I mentioned dreams, you know, the spirit speaking to us in dreams and intuition and stuff. And there's a lot, even in the scriptures, about the dream state. And that's where God speaks to us. I mean, our pineal gland releases DMT whenever we sleep, and we go into these enchanted realms, and God deals with us, signs and symbols and dreams and figures and things, and all types of interesting things, weird things happen in the middle of the night when we sleep. And you talked about having conversations, what you would say were spirits in the middle of the night in the dream state. Can you talk a little bit about that and what actually happens whenever we dream?
Well, that specific memory, I saw them more clearly as a child. And it's kind of funny, as I grew and I started to consciously practice my psychic ability, I got to a point where I could see again. And I said, please don't, because it was too much for me to stay grounded and actually see spirit. But I have still seen, and it's mostly like light outlines, light bodies, shadow. I've seen shadow people too as well. But that particular memory, it was my group of guides. I call them almost like the council. And now they speak in a voice of we. So they're just one consciousness. But I saw it was around 6 to 8 of them around my bed. And it was just these beautiful orbs of light, looking like light beings around the bed. And I just felt safe. I felt comforted. And they put me to sleep, I'd feel sleepy. And then I guess I would dream. I know I had a lot of flying dreams. I had a lot of interdimensional dreams, and I try to explain them to my babysitter in the morning, or to my family. And I just, thinking I could fly at 4 years old and trying to jump and fly. And I was so confused why it didn't work in the physical realm. But yeah, they've been with me all along. And that's something they tell me a lot, that when we go into deep meditation, that's more of my adult experience of them, is trance meditation, which is like sleeping while you're still a little bit aware. And that practice is, oh my God, it's so amazing. It's the most relaxing thing you can do. But trusting that when you start downloading information or hearing those voices, if they are uplifting, if they're healing, it's good. And I know there are evil things out there to look out for. I feel lucky I have not seen that in the way that other people have. But that's important to clear yourself, protect yourself, look to the divine to help you do that. But yeah, that's how they come, and they just speak in blocks of thought and sentences and things that I couldn't generate on my own, especially back in the day when I was developing. I was like, that's not, and even now I'm a human being. I'm a normal woman. I walk around, I cook dinner, I do laundry, I have cats, I have a boyfriend, I have life. So deep mystical thoughts is something that comes from another source. I can never take credit for that. And I think that's important, whether it's in dreams or in meditation, to know it is coming from an important place.
Someone here, I don't know if this is Allie or Kenny, a friend of mine, says voices of we. You said that they speak as in we. Let's focus in on the voices. Hearing voices, I mean, when we're talking about that, that's, it could be dangerous.
Yes.
Could be good. There's scriptures. The scripture says that Jesus says, my sheep know my voice, in a stranger's voice they will not follow. So there's this voice there. Jesus, as far as, existing physically, is long gone, but he's here in essence through us, the second coming, like you spoke about. I want to talk about how that sounds, because I think this could help people. And I think by bringing our pieces of the puzzle together and seeing what it looks like, it'll help people do the same thing. They have their pieces, they're trying to figure in, they're trying to make sense of what we're talking about. We're hearing voices, or the spirits are speaking to me. These type of things can be scary. And I'll say this for me, just from my experience, and you let me know how because I want to know how they sound. Is there a tone, right? For me, as a Christian, coming up as a Christian, right, hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit, it's an inward knowing. It's what we call a still small voice. The Bible calls it a quickening in my spirit, an inward knowing. Sometimes you can hear it. It's an inward dialogue, an inward conversation. The voices of we, from a Christian standpoint, would be, okay, well, is it the Holy Spirit speaking to you? Is it God speaking to you? Or is it Jesus speaking to you? Or maybe it's the angels who, like, it's that essence. It's the inspiration. They don't sound different. Like, God doesn't talk, and then Jesus talks, and then the Holy Spirit. They're not like having this, and I've been led by those voices, right? As a Christian, as a believer, I've been led by the voice of God, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's a we. The three are one. It's a we. And I'll say this also, while stargazing, communicating and seeing angelic lights in the sky, starships, and what we would call UFOs, or I would call the Elohim, seraphim, the cherubim, the angelic lights that are up there. They communicate as well. There's no difference in the voice. There's no extra bass in the voice of God. Like, it's a communication thing. And to understand, like, what voice it is or how that voice sounds, for me, is judging the fruit in what they're telling you. Like, they don't sound different, or, hey, that's a demon talking to me, that's this. I think you have to judge by the fruit. Is that kind of what it feels like for you too? Like, do they sound differently? Is there a different vibration with the angelic versus the demonic? I'll say that the demonic brings a state of confusion and dysphoria and fear and things like that. But when the angelic, it's a beauty, peace, higher consciousness, and love, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, now that you're breaking it down like that, I see the details of that question, and that's really cool. So yeah, for me, and what I teach my students all the time is, you know what you're dealing with how it makes you feel. Like you said, if you feel dysphoric, you feel off, it's going to be like, look out for that.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't like allow another person, or some of us do, and we have to learn to stop
True.
allowing another person to make us feel that way when they talk to us. It's like if they say something, that doesn't feel right. Well, they're probably manipulating. They're lying. They're trying to get something out of you, or they're abusing you. You know, you have to like be able to recognize that. And that can be a journey for a lot of us. And it certainly was for me when I was younger. But then once I got that clear, and actually my communication with spirit helped me get clear on the human realm about that. Oddly enough, it was very, very interesting that by being able to tell spirit and put boundaries with spirit, I started doing it with people. But yeah, it's a feeling, and it is like a welling up from within. It's almost like when I'm in a trance state and I'm feeling that, it's almost as if it's coming through, the sound is coming through my atoms in my body. And it feels amazing. I feel like I'm being infused with wisdom and an understanding, even though God will always say, and the higher spirit will always say, you'll never really understand it, so stop trying. And that's part of the like release of, you know, faith. I call it fractal thinking. You start asking lots of questions like, well, how does this work? And how's that working?
Yeah.
And they're like, shh, we'll give you just enough to show you, you know, that it's all good and it's all balanced and we've got this. And I have sensed some dark energies. And I will say this about dark energies. In my experience, when I've gone into them, it has been, when you really look at it, it's usually been a spirit that is stuck in a dark place or a sad place. Again, I haven't had the demonic sort of experience that I've heard of out there. But when I've looked at something that feels dark and demonic and scary, and there's been a couple of times where I've worked to send a spirit to the light. And it was deep abuse on behalf of this spirit that they were still living over and over again. It was very disturbing to look at, but to go in there as a spirit worker and send her into the light was really important. And it took the dark energy out of the house that I was in. Otherwise, a lot of clearing, Palo Santo, sage, and really doing a lot of energy clearing in a home where dark energy is stuck is important. And the other thing that came up when you asked me that question was sometimes earth energies can sound a little dark until you really feel like it'll feel like that low, you know, we talk about the deeper voice of God. Like I've more experience in a drum circle once, it was really going really heavy. And all of a sudden I started to hear this almost like a growl, like a jaguar growl underneath the drums. And I'd never heard that before. And I still to this day, I'm not sure if it was kind of a dark energy coming in because of certain people in the group, or it was an earth energy, because every once in a while that earth energy will come in. I'm like, what is that? That is not the angels. That is not the extraterrestrials I know. Yeah. So you have to be very discerning, but again, it's how it makes you feel, and spirit, God, the angels and benevolent energies from other dimensions will always seek to educate and heal. There will be no manipulation. They will never tell you to do something. They will never tell you this person's really wrong and you need to fix it, or you know, you need to go do something to balance this out. It's simply about being. You know, they're going to teach us about being and how to be with others and to grow our hearts in compassion. And that's my experience. That's when you know you're working with the higher energies.
For me, I think it's like whatever you're doing in life, like if you're doing wickedness, if you're doing bad stuff that you know you shouldn't be doing, and you're going against that inward knowing that, hey, this is wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think then if you try to tap in at those levels, sometimes you deal with whatever you're entertaining. If you're walking in the light as he is in the light, you know, you will not gratify the lust of the flesh. You won't be doing the negative egoic things because you're walking in the light. But if you're manipulating people, you're lying, you're cheating and all this stuff, and then you still call yourself a light worker, and then you try to tap into the other sides, I think you are susceptible to have those negative demonic encounters. And I think you just really see and communicate with the beings of whatever level you're vibing at. And if you're doing all that stuff, you're going to have those type of experiences. At least I did anyway. But now that, you know, people ask me, because I have these crazy, scary stories, man, when I was a teenager doing black magic and witchcraft. But now they're like, okay, now have you been attacked? Have you had this? And like everything's been beautiful now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm at this level now, I've dealt with the lower level stuff. And now when I tap in, it's all beauty. It's all Christ consciousness. It's all of the light, you know?
That is awesome. And that shows that journey. That's a pretty amazing journey to be able to see the shadow side and come back and know. And it is about looking at the shadow in ourselves, which it's very important for everyone, because we all do have the dark side. And it's important, no matter what happens, how you play that out in your life, to acknowledge you have it and to see what's in the dark corners before they do take over. You know?
I got lucky.
Good.
I got lucky. Amazing. I live to talk about it, man. Yeah,
Good.
I came out of it.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. Somebody, Leslie here is mentioning, and we'll just jump on this question right quick. She's mentioning that her cousin had some type of mist-like spirit. I've seen mist spirits, right? She said it tried to go in their mouth. I've also had a friend of mine who was on like heavy drugs, a bunch of pills and stuff, and then he had a spirit get on him and try to go in his mouth. Is there something significant with going in through the mouth, or is it symbolic of your voice? What do you think would go on with some type of negative entity trying to gain access through the mouth?
I would be very careful of any spirit that tries to enter without your invitation. That's just my rule, and I just stick to that. I don't know that I've had that experience or heard of it, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen. If it does, it's simply like, stand up and say, you have to make
Close
your
your
energy
mouth.
larger than the mist. You know, it's like, it's a bully. And it's probably not trying to do anything good if it's not asking permission first. And it doesn't feel good, if it feels like it's forcing itself on you. You know, there could be healing happening if the person needed to be calmed down. But again, it would probably, you can also ask spirit to come another way. If it is a healing spirit, if it is your guides trying to help you, say, well, that's too crazy for me right now. Can you come another way? And they'll figure out another way to come to you where it's not scary, if it is indeed them.
I haven't seen spirits enter through the mouth. I've seen them leave through the mouth on several occasions of getting in deep prayer and deliverance with people and coming out. I've like pulled it out with my mouth with an inhale, pulled it into me, and then released it because I knew what to do with it. But I've seen, and we've talked about this on several of the past episodes, of like, even in Christian deliverance, there was this realm where like people would start coughing whenever they were going through deliverance and negative things were being released out of their life, and they would start coughing and gagging. And it became normal. And like all my friends who were going through this type of deliverance ministry, it became like mid-conversation would start choking, or you tell them a truth that just like hit them to the core that they needed, and then it start gagging. It was really weird. But
it does make sense though, because breath is life, breath, and that is vibration. That's what runs through everything. So it does make a lot of sense, actually.
So I mentioned starships. I mentioned, lights in the sky, UFOs. We're talking about angels and things like that. Have you ever physically seen anything supernatural? Has there ever been, like, I know we get impressions and we feel the chills and we're at one. There's just all of this stuff that you don't need to see. But have you ever seen anything cross over, whether it be good or bad, or a ghost, an angel, a UFO, something like that? Have you ever seen anything cross over?
Well, I definitely have had a few moments where I was a UFO spotter, and there was, it's not in me all the time, but there's just been certain moments in life. It's like, look at the sky, look at that. And I'm just like, that's different. And there was one year where I constantly saw these really interesting comet-like things, and Spirit was telling me that's information. It was right when things were getting really rocky in the world. I mean, really rocky. Right after 2012, I think it's like there was just all kinds of stuff happening. And I was like, what are these things? I've seen like 4 of them in 3 months, and I've never seen them before in my life, and other people aren't seeing them. But they are physical things in the sky. I'm funny. I look up the scientific explanation and the spiritual explanation for all the things that I experienced. So there is a scientific one. And they were saying there was messages to calm down humanity. We needed to be calm so that we didn't overreact. And it was something, that a vibration they were sending to us. That was actually during my trance meditation classes, and I've been really lucky to develop in safe circles and groups with a teacher. So that's most of my supernatural experiences happened in kind of that container. And I guess spiritualism is where my teacher comes from. So a lot of the experiences I've had are similar to any spiritualist you talk to. Transfiguration on the face is something that happens a lot with trance meditation and channeling. So you can actually see ectoplasm rise from the face and it changes shape. I've seen that many times. It's fascinating. And also the light bodies when I started to develop as a medium. And I've talked to other mediums that see things all the time walking around. And you can literally do that with your guides and say how much you want to take. Like, I'm here, I'm working for you, I'm of service, but just let's turn that off. Let's turn it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that was fascinating and amazing. And shadow people and little fairy spirits, I get a little annoyed at them in my house when they bother my animals. So I've seen a lot of that, and people that know me just laugh, and I have to get out the stage and tell them to go away and clear out the space. But you can tell with your animals if they're acting really strange and there's no bugs in the room, they're chasing invisible things. My dogs and cats both have had that. And I just say, do not mess with my animals. You're driving them crazy. And I deal with that accordingly. But that's been most of it, what I can think of right now. But to me, it's so natural. Like, I'll just see things, or when I'm in nature, I do a lot of nature walks. That's a huge teacher for me. The trees, the ground, the rocks, and I'll have visions and see things, mists and orbs and things like that. And I just love it. It's just like, oh, this is the real world,
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like all there, but you're privy to it if you want to see it. Sometimes I think it's by accident, or we're just at the right, place at the right time and a location, and you see it, and a lot of times it changes your life. But what I found out is, like, whatever you're looking for, you're gonna find. Like, if you want to see fairies, if you want to see UFOs, if you want to see demons, or whatever the case is, and it shifts your consciousness and you begin to look for that. I mean, that's even true about, dogma and doctrine. People who are watching this show and trying to pick the things that they don't agree with and the things that doesn't fit their belief system and stuff. And you have those people too. But then there's other people watching who are like, oh, I love that. Yes, I agree with it. So beautiful. Those type of people too. So it's all about your consciousness and what you're looking for, you're going to find, right?
Absolutely. And you just made me recall a story of when I asked Spirit to really show me something I couldn't deny. I came home from a development class and I was like, all right, I said things I couldn't possibly know. Obviously, this is something I'm getting into. My teacher had told me early on, you think you're going to get your graduate degree in art therapy, but you're going to actually do this. And sure enough, I'm doing this now. And at the time I said, no way, I'm not doing this. This is just fun for me. But I went home and I said, okay, Spirit, show me something that I can't argue with. And I know my dad was very close to me at that time, really working with me in a safe way. So I feel it was probably him. As I went to bed that night, I fell asleep pretty quickly and I woke up, the lights were still on. I think I was working on astral travel that night. I wanted to just kind of play with that a little bit. And I fell into sleep while I was doing that. And I woke up and felt 2 hands on my ankles yank me down on the bed about 3 inches. And if I had not asked for a sign, I would have been terrified. I was anyway. I said, okay, that's enough. I believe you. I believe you. And I said, don't do that again. Don't do that again. I'm not going to test you again. But I feel like they were kind of laughing at me like, okay, well, all right, stop testing us. And it was, for me, again, a safe thing to experience. But if I had not asked, if I hadn't been looking for it, I would have had a problem with that. Yeah. So, it happens. It is Spirit, especially your guides, especially any benevolent spirit that wants to serve through you or help you in your life is just waiting for you to ask. Yeah. To wherever you're ready to begin and start communicating and start using that wisdom in your life, they're just sitting there waiting. So
there's a scripture, a quote that Jesus said, and I think it's universal. He said, "You have not because you ask not." Paul repeats it as well. You have not because you ask not, and that's for everything. That's for anything, like across the board. It works with spirit as well. If you're wanting to see things, if you're wanting to you know what I'm saying, be in tune. But yeah, it gets weird, man. It gets weird at night, and it's getting weirder. You would think that things would be a little bit more normal, but in the middle of the night, man, there's just so much stuff that happens in my bedroom, man. It is insane. I don't know if it's all in my head or whatever, or when I'm dreaming, I go to these weird places. But no, but when you're open to that stuff and they communicate with you, like the fear is you're gonna wake up and there's a little alien there. Like you don't want to be startled. And I know, like what's the name? Jordan Maxwell would say, like, they were out gazing at UFOs and having all crazy encounters with UFOs and starships and stuff. And they went back to the hotel, and he's like praying and he's speaking. He's like, I'm open for this contact, but I don't want you to wake me up in the middle of the night as a little gray alien standing in my bedroom and startle me. Please don't do that, whatever you do. You know what I'm saying? So he's putting that intention out there that I don't want that to happen. But the things that go bump in the night, man, and the spirits, and when we close our eyes and that DMT is released, man, God really communicates with us, with the things we've been suppressing, or things about other people, or about our future, or the astral realms. I mean, so much stuff is going on. I don't want to say that I'm tormented by it. It is weird. You know what I'm saying? I'm not tormented. It is weird, but you have to like, you know, it becomes normal though, right? I always cover myself in prayer, and, you know, make sure that the angels are watching over me and stuff. But I remember that, you know, there were people that I knew back in the day who were into black magic, where they were like literally tormented in the nights by spirits in their house and stuff, and they really had no control over. It's like their house was like an open portal to whatever spirits that wanted to come through, you know. So covering yourself is important, right?
And clearing. I have this conversation a lot with my local students. We talk, you know, a lot of people talk about protection. It can be very exhausting to think I've got to protect myself from all this stuff. I teach clearing. So making sure, because we're all connected no matter what. We're connected to the spirit world, just like we were talking about. Inner dimensions, it's all there. And it is what we notice or don't notice. And if energy is particularly strong, it will wake you up. Like in this house, this house was built in 1940. It's an old bungalow house, one of the first in Orlando. And when we moved in, I could not sleep at night. And I'm a really good sleeper now. I still do some interdimensional travel. I'll have those dreams where I was doing some work somewhere. I'll just feel extra tired when I wake up. So we definitely do that in our sleep. And we definitely download in our sleep too. Yeah. But this was something else. It was like an entity or an energy in the house. It wasn't evil. It just felt like it was uncomfortable for me, and I was almost like not welcome. And you know, other folks in the house didn't notice because they're not tuned into that world as much as I am. So I would get up, I would do sage clearing, I would do Reiki clearing throughout the house, and I had to do this several times. And then we had to clear out the crawl space in the bottom of the house in the attic. And when we finally cleared out about 4 decades of stuff that was just kind of left behind, the house was clear. So, you know, stuff can hold energy too. And that's the whole art of feng shui, to get your inner, you know, your home's energy clear, because spirit will kind of congeal into cushions and blankets and old things, and it'll latch on. It's like, you know, old energy will just stick around. So it's really good to keep that stuff cleared out, just like you clean your body. And that will help a little bit. But I have had that same experience, and I'm like, oh, okay, someone's bad. And every once in a while I have to periodically cleanse again, because it's an old house, you know?
Yeah. There was like, you know, we're talking about that everybody's intuitive, and everybody has spiritual giftings and abilities and stuff. And, you know, we come to that understanding at different stages and different points in our lives. And we're talking about healing. And I think that the best way to tap into those things, or to unlock those things, is first heal the healers. First, you know what I'm saying, do the work that you need to, you know what I'm saying, do within. We're talking about healing. What does that look like in a tangible way for somebody? Like, I know we're talking about it, but what do we mean by healing? How does that start? Healing from what? What you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a big question. And it's so much more than going to get energy work done. I'll tell you that, or get even a Reiki attunement. It can
start there though, right?
It's a good place to start. That's activation. You get an activation, but it's what you do with the activation in your life. And so for me, my place of darkness was in my darkest place. Through my teens, I had a lot of dark places, and then the darkest was in college, where I weighed 90 pounds more than I should. I was a junk food junkie. I had several physical conditions, and I was on 5 medications by the time I was like 22. And my grandma was on like 19, which drove me crazy. But I was like 5 in my 20s, like, no, I'm not gonna live like this. And I was very depressed, suicidal thoughts. And look at me now. I mean, I'm one of the happiest people you'll meet. But back then, I was really in despair, and really in fear and in the shadows. And I knew, because I had kind of shielded my vision since I was so angry at God as a child, that I had not opened up to divine guidance. I didn't have faith, and I had to work on my life, and I had to do it with the spirituality intact. So I knew I was walking around blindfolded. That's what I called myself. Like, I can see, I'm not blind, I'm not lost, but I've just blindfolded myself. So I had to take that blindfold off and start making choices. So it's great to have inspiration. It's great to feel the healing energy coming in. But if we don't do anything different in our lives physically, it's like, I teach coming down through the chakra system. You start with the crown chakra, you go to the third eye, you go to the throat, you start speaking your truth, you find out what brings you joy, you find out what brings you power, and you go, but you have to plug it in at the root chakra level. And then that's the most challenging part to me, was to change how I behaved, how I thought, how I ate, balancing, the fun stuff like alcohol, and, really making sure that I didn't go completely ascetic and completely like a monk. I could enjoy life, but not go over the deep end. And so I think that's a big healing thing. And it's about self-love, about loving your human self. Because it's easy to love our spiritual self. It's amazing. Like when you really tune into that, like, oh my God, it feels so great. And a lot of people get stuck up in the psychic centers and not want to come down. And then life is just really crappy for them. And I was there, and I wanted to just disappear. And that's where I wanted to die. Like, let me just stay up in the upper chakras, and it's not time for me yet. And I've got to come down and be in this world. And that's, most people that are suffering in that space are the ones we need here, to be in the world, present with their spirits and heal. So that's the challenge. And when you can do it for yourself, that self-healing journey, you can encourage others. You can be an example for others, just like Christ, living by example,
Yeah,
and all the modalities you can throw at it. Whatever feels good to you, use it.
That's a big one too, as far as like being okay to have a good time, or not being so spiritual minded that you're no earthly good type deal. And like with the Gnostic beliefs, and even some of the like really strict Christian beliefs, is like anything that brings your flesh or your body pleasure, then it's evil. And if you abstain from anything that makes you happy, then you're more godly than others or whatever. And there was just, it's a poverty mentality, all types of stuff that come along with that. And I had to kind of break out of that. And what I think what did it for me was, what kind of put it on me is I seen people do it the wrong way, especially with money and with cars and clothing, and it was like this ambition within the Christian circles for me was like they never had enough. They always wanted more. It was always, once they got that good job, you want a better job. You got to get the better. And it was always like just moving up this weird materialistic corporate ladder type deal. And I was like, man, that looks like the furthest thing from Christ. And so it kind of pushed me on the other side to the poverty thing. It's like, okay, you got to forsake money, you got to forsake riches, and forsake the fun things. But it's about a balance of being able to go out and have fun, go see a good movie, eat a good meal,